Hello, and welcome to the special edition of Masterworks of Video Game music. In this episode, we will discuss the music of the individual dungeons and temples of 1998's The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Please note that this is not a ranking in any way or a discussion of level design or playthrough tactics. There are plenty of other videos you can find on these other topics, but we are going to take a more in-depth look at how each dungeon's unique sound design creates an atmosphere that immerses us into the environment. And of course, there will be some spoilers, but since this game came out over 20 years ago, if you haven't played it by now, then what are you waiting for? This first sub-level occurs very early in the game when the character of Link is just beginning his journey. The setting of the dungeon is inside the trunk of a giant tree, so there are wide open spaces that branch off into smaller rooms. The music here contradicts the happy, whimsical melody of the Kokiri village. The Deku tree is much more ambiguous, like much of the dungeon and temple music in the game. It consists mainly of ascending stacks of seventh chords, which is made up of 4 different notes based on intervals of thirds. The music itself sounds like a low flute or panpipes in nature, lending a mysterious yet dangerous nature to the player's surroundings as they learn how to navigate through the level. The second dungeon is a major departure from the Deku tree in that much of the musical background is based on special effects that mimic the fire theme of the level. Sounds such as steam escaping from vents and crackling fire are underscored by a low bass line that permeates the entire musical score. No rhythm or any other form is used here, as the music exists for the sole purpose of providing ambiance to the idea that the player is inside a cavern in the middle of a volcano. The third dungeon is the first example of dungeon music in the game that presents a definite rhythm. Synthesized strings play chords over a steady drum beat that undulates back and forth, almost as if it were mimicking the slow, labored breathing of Jabu-Jabu himself. This is complemented by strange noises that may serve to portray bodily functions such as digestion, as the entire level takes place inside a giant fish's stomach. The Forest Temple has probably some of the creepiest and atmospheric music in the entire Zelda series. Like Jabu-Jabu's belly, it begins with a definite steady rhythm, but instead of drums, the rhythm is played by what seems to be wooden sticks fading in and out of volume. Above this is a series of chords played by high woodwind-seeming instruments, which is very reminiscent of the music from the Inside the Deku Tree theme earlier in the game. Sporadically punctuating the chords in another high woodwind-type sound is a brief repeated rhythm that is echoed by a vocal sound that seems like chanting. This is extremely unnerving, especially considering the dark, almost claustrophobic atmosphere of the temple. The repeating intervals of the short melodic phrases combined with the confusing layout can easily leave players disoriented and even agitated as they struggle to solve the many puzzles leading to the end. Even after several decades following Ocarina of Time's release, a mystery lies over the music heard in the Fire Temple area. The first release of the game on the Nintendo 64 system included a vocal-sounding melody over a light percussion line of tambourines and drums. This vocal line, however, was removed by the release of the GameCube version several years later. It is still undetermined why the vocal line was removed, as it added a dimension to the music complemented by the idea that the Fire Temple was a place of worship. However, the most common theory is that the vocal line closely resembled an Islamic prayer, thus controversy resulted, leading to Nintendo removing the vocal chanting entirely. The Water Temple, unlike the Forest and Fire Temples, is a much more calm and meditative soundtrack. This may be in part to counteract the frustration players feel when they have to raise and lower the water levels repeatedly just to backtrack because they missed a single key and sorry. Wind chimes and bells create a downward melodic theme that sound very much like the shimmering of water trickling down from a waterfall. A flute-type instrument also plays a short East Asian-inspired melodic figure that is interrupted by a staccato melody played by what could be interpreted as a sitar or a Japanese koto. A low bass pedal chord adds a bit of ominous foreboding to the music, which nicely juxtaposes between the calm upper line. The Shadow Temple brings back the tribal-like steady percussion line found in several of the other temples, but includes several differences that highlight the spooky atmosphere. A wailing vocal line glisses downward after a dark, lower three-note melody accompanied by a gong. The idea of the melody line bending downwards and upwards almost creates a sickening feeling that is complemented by the poisonous atmosphere shrouded in darkness. The vocal lines are the most prominent here than in any other temple, which is designed to sound like an otherworldly chant of unseen dark spirits. The last temple, the Spirit Temple, has a soundtrack which is the closest to achieving a definite key, resulting in a melody composed in a harmonic minor scale. The key is established directly in the beginning of the music with light percussion accompaniment, and the instruments are primarily string sounds with the exception of the main melody, which is played by a reed pipe instrument that seems like an Indian ney or a Western English horn. Though the melody is pre-composed, it almost sounds as if the melody were improvised, which is very common for music from East Asian culture. This is appropriate for the environment of the temple, which is located in the middle of a large desert. The final main area of the game is known as Ganon's Keep, which replays the music first presented in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, known as the Priest of the Dark Order. The most striking aspect of this music is that it is diegetic, which means that the music itself exists within the game world and can be heard by the characters. In fact, it is Ganon himself who is playing the melody on a large pipe organ, which the player discovers when they enter the boss room. In addition, the music gets louder the higher the character ascends through Ganon's castle, all the way up a winding staircase surrounded by a stained glass window and growing light as they work their way up toward Ganon. The melody itself is foreboding and ominous, so much that the music has been used to represent Ganon in nearly every Zelda game in which he is present, including Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Breath of the Wild. Thank you so much for watching, and feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. You can also check out more games in the Masterworks of Video Game music series, and please let me know what game you would like me to discuss next. Until then, see you next time.